She purchased a rusty 1960s Airstream trailer for $400 at a yard sale, believing she had discovered a project to occupy her empty weekends. But when the seller's daughter knocked on her door 3 weeks later, carrying a duffel bag containing $60 million in gold bars, everything she believed she understood about luck, loss, and buried family secrets would break apart in ways she never thought possible. Before we begin this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will amaze you. The morning Rachel Winters first spotted the Airstream, it rested like a beached silver whale in old Walter Drummond's backyard, weeds climbing through its wheels, aluminum skin oxidized and dull. She had only pulled over at the estate sale because her GPS had redirected her through this forgotten corner of rural Oregon, and something about the hand-painted sign, "Everything must go," had drawn her off the road. Rachel was 38, divorced, working as a night shift nurse at a hospital 2 towns over. Her days off felt empty and quiet in a way that made her chest ache. She had been searching for something, anything to fill the silence that had moved into her small ranch house since her daughter Emma left for college. Maybe a garden, maybe pottery classes. She hadn't expected to fall in love with 30 feet of neglected aluminum and broken dreams. "That old thing," Walter's nephew Marcus said when she paused in front of it. He was managing the sale, clearly eager to clear out his uncle's property and get back to Portland. Uncle Walt bought it in '65. Haven't seen inside it in 20 years, probably full of mice. Rachel ran her hand along the curved surface, feeling the pitted metal beneath her fingertips. "How much?" Marcus shrugged. "400s and it's yours." "Heck, I'll throw in the hitch if you've got something to pull it with." She did. Her father's old F-150 truck sat in her driveway, barely used since he had passed 2 years ago. Another empty space she had been trying to fill. "I'll take it," she said, surprising herself with how quickly the words came out. Marcus looked relieved. "Thank God. Was worried I'd have to pay someone to haul it to the scrapyard," as Rachel counted out the bills from her wallet. Money she had been saving for new kitchen cabinets. Marcus handed her a manila envelope. "Almost forgot. Walt left this taped under the kitchen table. Says for the new owner on it. Probably just the manual or something." Rachel took the envelope, noticed how it had been sealed with wax. Unusual for a simple manual. She tucked it into her jacket pocket, her mind already racing with restoration plans. It took 3 attempts and the help of 2 neighbors to get the Airstream hitched and towed to her property. She parked it beside her garage where the afternoon sun caught the few spots of aluminum that still held their shine. Standing there, she could almost see what it used to be. Sleek, modern, ready for adventure, the kind of thing young families bought when they believed the open road held all the answers. That night, after a shower to wash off the day's dust and sweat, Rachel sat at her kitchen table with a glass of wine and the manila envelope. The wax seal broke easily, brittle with age. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in careful script. "To whoever gives this old girl a second chance, she's got secrets in her bones. Treat her well and she'll return the favor. Check behind the water heater panel. And when Judith comes looking, tell her I kept my promise. Walter." Rachel read it 3 times. The words making less sense with each pass. Who was Judith? What promise? And what could possibly be behind the water heater panel of a camper that had sat abandoned for 2 decades? She grabbed a flashlight and headed outside. The Airstream's door opened with a squeal of protest, releasing air that smelled of old fabric and forgotten summers. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a time capsule from 1965. Turquoise vinyl seats, wood grain laminate, curtains with atomic age patterns. Everything covered in dust, but surprisingly intact. She made her way to the back where the water heater should be. The panel was held by 4 screws, their heads painted over multiple times. It took her 20 minutes with a screwdriver and some WD-40 to work them loose. When the panel finally came free, she expected to find nothing but pipes and possibly mouse droppings. Instead, she found a metal box, military green, wedged into the space with surgical precision. Her hands trembled as she worked it free. It was heavier than it looked. The kind of weight that meant something. The latches were stiff but not locked. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 things: a leather journal, a ring of keys she didn't recognize, and a black and white photograph of a young woman standing beside the very Airstream Rachel now owned. On the back, in the same handwriting as the letter, Judith, 1969. Before everything changed, Rachel opened the journal carefully. The first entry was dated June 15, 1965. Bought the Airstream today. Judith thinks I'm crazy, but she smiled when she saw it. That smile. God, that smile worth every penny. We're going to see America, she says. Going to find all the places the maps forgot. I promised her adventure. I plan to keep that promise. Rachel settled onto the dusty camper bench. flashlight propped beside her, and began to read. The journal chronicled Walter and Judith's life, young and in love, traveling the country in their silver home. Through Walter's words, she saw dusty highways, hidden lakes, small towns where they'd park for weeks and become temporary locals. She saw a love that seemed unshakable until she reached the entry from August 3, 1969. The diagnosis came today. Judith tried to be brave, but I saw her hands shake when she folded the doctor's papers. 6 months, maybe 8. She made me promise not to cancel our plans. I want to see the redwoods, she said. I want to wake up to the ocean. So that's what we'll do. Every sunrise she wants, I'll find it for her. Rachel wiped her eyes, the words blurring on the page. The entries after that grew shorter, dates spread further apart, but each one painted a picture of a man trying to give the woman he loved one last perfect journey. The final entry was December 20th, 1969. She's gone, past this morning watching the sun come up over the Pacific. Her last words, keep the promise. I don't know what she meant. We saw everything she wanted to see, did everything on her list, but I'll keep the Airstream. Maybe someday I'll understand what promise she meant. Rachel closed the journal, her throat tight. She understood now why the camper had sat untouched for so long. It wasn't neglect. It was a shrine. Walter couldn't bear to step inside the last place he'd been happy. She was about to put everything back when she noticed something else in the box. A small key taped to the bottom, and beneath it, coordinates written in pencil. 44.058 north, 193 west. What starts as restoration becomes revelation, and Rachel's discovery in that Airstream will soon bring a visitor she never expected. If you're enjoying this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Rachel couldn't sleep that night. The coordinates ran through her mind like a song she couldn't shake. She had plugged them into her phone. They led to a spot in the Cascade Mountains, about 3 hours east, national forest land, middle of nowhere. What could Walter have hidden there, and why? She spent the next week cleaning the Airstream, partly because it needed it, partly because touching the same surfaces Walter and Judith had touched made her feel connected to their story. She found their traces everywhere. A tube of Judith's lipstick rolled under the sink, coral pink and barely used. Walter's reading glasses in a drawer, one lens cracked. A road atlas with routes highlighted in yellow. Notes in the margins about good diners and scenic viewpoints. Each discovery felt like an archaeological find. Pieces of a life interrupted. Rachel found herself talking to them as she worked, telling Judith about how the world had changed, assuring Walter she'd take care of their silver home. It was a Thursday afternoon when the knock came. Rachel was under the Airstream checking the axles when she heard it. 3 sharp raps on her front door. She slid out, wiping her greasy hands on her jeans, and made her way to the house. The woman on her porch was maybe 70, silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing a navy coat that looked expensive even from a distance. But it was her eyes that made Rachel's breath catch. The same eyes from the photograph, just touched by time. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight tremor. "I'm looking for, that is, I heard someone bought my father's Airstream." Rachel's heart skipped. "You're Judith," the woman blinked, surprise flickering across her face. "How did you—" "Yes, Judith Drummond." "Well, Judith Chen now." She paused, studying Rachel's face. "You found something, didn't you? In the camper?" Rachel nodded slowly. "Would you like to come in? I think we have a lot to talk about." They sat at Rachel's kitchen table, the journal and photograph between them like a bridge across decades. Judith's hands shook as she picked up the picture, a sad smile touching her lips. "I haven't seen this in 50 years, she whispered. "I thought he'd destroyed everything." "The journal says you died," Rachel said gently. "In 1969. Judith's laugh was bitter. "In a way I did." She set the photograph down carefully. "My name wasn't Judith then. It was James." Rachel felt the pieces clicking into place, understanding flooding through her. "My parents found out," Judith continued, "about who I really was, about Walter accepting me, loving me as Judith. They threatened everything, his job, his family, violence. This was 1969. The world wasn't ready for us, so you had to disappear," Rachel said softly. Judith nodded. "Walter created an entire story, told everyone I had cancer, that I died. Meanwhile, I moved to San Francisco, started over. He promised we'd find a way to be together again when things were safer, when the world changed. But the world took too long to change, 40 years too long. By the time I could finally be myself openly, legally, he was already starting to forget. Early onset dementia. He didn't remember me when I tried to visit 5 years ago." Judith wiped at her eyes. "Marcus, his nephew, he didn't even know I existed. Walter kept his promise. He never told anyone the truth. They sat in silence for a moment before Rachel remembered the keys. There's something else, she said, retrieving the metal box. Coordinates in these keys. Judith's eyes widened when she saw them. Oh my God, he actually did it. Did what? Judith picked up the keys with trembling fingers. When we traveled, I used to joke about buried treasure. Said we should bury something at every beautiful place we stopped so we'd have reasons to go back. I never thought, Walter, what did you do? The next morning they set out together. Rachel drove while Judith navigated. The Airstream hitched behind them like a silver shadow. The coordinates led them deep into the mountains, down Forest Service roads that hadn't seen maintenance in years. Twice Rachel had to get out and move fallen branches. Finally they reached the spot, a small clearing with a view of the valley below. Judith gasped when she saw it. We camped here, she said. Summer of '69, right before everything fell apart. We watched the meteor shower all night. Made wishes on everyone. They found it using a metal detector Rachel had borrowed from a neighbor, a metal box buried 3 feet down near a distinctive boulder. The keys opened it easily, like they'd been waiting all this time. Inside, wrapped in plastic and oilcloth, were gold bars, dozens of them, each stamped with dates from the 1960s. Beneath them, an envelope addressed to Judith in Walter's handwriting. With shaking hands, Judith opened it and read aloud. My dearest Judith, if you're reading this, then you've finally come home. I knew that day would come, even if I wouldn't be here to see it. I liquidated everything after you left. The house, my father's business, every investment. I converted it all to gold because I remembered you saying gold was forever, like what we had. It's all here, waiting for you. Enough to make up for the life they stole from you. Enough to finally be free. All my love, Walter. Walter's signature was shaky at the end. Judith broke down then, 50 years of loss and love pouring out in the quiet forest. Rachel held her. This stranger who had become something more in the span of a single day. When Judith finally composed herself, she looked at the gold, a fortune by any measure, worth millions at today's prices. Then she looked at Rachel. He would have liked you, she said. Walter always said the Airstream would know when it found the right person. This is yours, Rachel said quickly. All of it, Judith shook her head. I have everything I need. A life, a family who accepts me, grandchildren who only know me as Grandma Judy. She picked up one gold bar, running her thumb over the stamped date. But this is too much for one person to carry. Walter knew that. That's why he made sure the Airstream found you first. Over the next several hours, they made 3 trips to Rachel's truck, loading heavy bags with great care. The gold was worth more than Rachel could properly calculate. $60 million, maybe more. Enough to transform not just one life, but many. Back at Rachel's house, as the sun set behind the mountains, they sat in the restored Airstream, sharing a bottle of wine Judith had brought. The camper felt different now, not like a tomb or a shrine, but like a living thing again. What will you do? Judith asked. Rachel looked around the small space that had brought them together, thought about Walter's promise, about keeping promises. She told Judith about her work at the hospital, about the patients who couldn't afford treatment, about the families sleeping in their cars in the parking lot, about the empty wing that had been closed due to budget cuts. I want to create a foundation, Rachel said, for people who need medical care but can't afford it. For families going through what Walter went through, watching someone they love struggle. Judith reached across the small table and squeezed her hand. The Drummond Chen Foundation, she said. Both names, both truths, so everyone knows that love is love no matter what package it comes in. Rachel smiled, feeling something settle in her chest. That empty space that had been aching since Emma left, since her father died, since her marriage ended, it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of purpose. Over the following weeks, lawyers and financial advisors descended like a careful swarm. The gold was authenticated. Taxes were paid. Foundations were established. The story leaked, of course. Mysterious fortune. Long-lost love. Transgender pioneer from an era when such courage could cost you everything. Reporters came calling, but Rachel and Judith presented a united front. This was about honoring a promise. Nothing more, nothing less. The Drummond Chen Foundation opened 6 months later. The first patient it helped was a single mother with cancer who had been sleeping in her car between treatments. The second was a transgender teenager whose family had kicked them out. By the end of the first year, hundreds of people had been helped, all because Walter Drummond had loved someone the world said he shouldn't and had spent 40 years keeping a promise. Rachel kept the Airstream. She and Judith took it out sometimes, following the old routes marked in Walter's atlas. They stopped at the places he and young Judith had been happy, leaving flowers at some, sharing wine at others, and sometimes on clear nights, they'd park somewhere with a good view of the stars and talk about promises, the ones we keep, the ones we break, and the ones that wait decades to be fulfilled. The camper became something of a legend in the vintage trailer community. People would approach at campgrounds, having heard whispers of the story. Rachel would invite them in, show them the photographs, tell them about Walter and Judith and the love that had survived even when the people couldn't stay together. "Every dent in this aluminum has a story," she'd say, running her hand along the wall. "Every repair is an act of faith that tomorrow will be worth seeing." One evening, a young couple approached, nervous and holding hands. They had driven 3 hours just to see the Airstream. They said they were getting married next month, but their families didn't approve. Different races, different religions, different everything that shouldn't matter, but somehow still did. "We heard about Walter and Judith," the young woman said, "about how love found a way, even if it took 50 years. We wanted to see that it was real." Rachel invited them inside. Judith was there that evening, and together they told the story again, the real one with all its pain and beauty. When they finished, the young man was crying. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping their story alive, for proving that love like that exists." After they left, Judith and Rachel sat in comfortable silence. The foundation had helped over 1,000 people by then. The Airstream had become a symbol of resilience, of promises kept, of love that refuses to die just because the world isn't ready for it. "Do you ever wonder," Judith asked, "if Walter knew this would happen? If he somehow planned for the Airstream to bring us together?" Rachel thought about it, about the strange chain of events that had led her to that estate sale, to that particular moment when she had needed something to fill the empty spaces in her life. "I think," she said slowly, "that sometimes the universe conspires to keep promises, even when the people who made them are gone. And sometimes an old camper and a box of gold bars are just the universe's way of saying that love always finds a way home." As she spoke, a meteor streaked across the sky, bright and brief and beautiful. They both saw it, both made wishes, both smiled at each other, knowing they had wished for the same thing, that somewhere, somehow, Walter knew his promise had been kept. The foundation grew. The Airstream traveled, and in a world that often seemed determined to divide, the story of Walter and Judith became a quiet reminder that love, real love, doesn't care about the rules. It just waits, patient as gold, for the right moment to shine. Rachel never remarried, but she never felt alone again either. She had purpose. She had Judith's friendship. She had the memories held in aluminum and vinyl and turquoise seats. And sometimes on quiet mornings when the light hit the Airstream just right, she swore she could feel them there, Walter and young Judith, together at last, finally free to be themselves. The empty spaces in her life hadn't been filled with things or people or distractions. They had been filled with something far more valuable, the knowledge that she had been chosen to complete a love story that had waited half a century for its ending. And what an ending it was! Not in death or separation, but in gold and generosity, in lives saved and promises kept. In proof that sometimes the universe does pay attention to the wishes we make on falling stars. Every life the foundation saved, every person who found hope in Walter and Judith's story, every mile the silver Airstream traveled, all of it was testament to a simple truth: love doesn't die. It just transforms, like pressure turning carbon to diamonds, like time turning sacrifice to gold. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to be part of that transformation. Sometimes, if we're paying attention, a $400 purchase at a yard sale becomes the key to unlocking not just a fortune, but a purpose. And that's worth more than all the gold bars in the world. Rachel understood that now. She had thought she was buying a project to fill her weekends. Instead, she had bought a legacy, a responsibility, and ultimately a second chance at understanding what really matters. Not the gold, though that had its purpose. Not the fame, though the story inspired thousands, but the simple, radical act of keeping a promise made in love, even when the world said that love shouldn't exist. That's what the Airstream taught her. That's what Walter and Judith's story proved, that love, real love, is the only treasure worth burying, and the only treasure that grows more valuable with time. Everything else, the gold, the foundation, the lives saved, that was just love made visible, promise made manifest. And in a world that often felt broken beyond repair, that was nothing short of a miracle. Up next, 2 more powerful stories that will restore your faith in love and human kindness. Click to continue this journey with us, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe in promises that transcend time.